Welcome back, Devils fans, to yet another edition of Devils Down Under, the October 27th, 2023 edition. I am your host, Chris, alongside my wonderful co-host, Georgia, as always. Georgia, it has been one of those weeks, both personally and in the hockey world.
Yeah.
So, how have you been?
Yeah, it's certainly been a week for me. I've had a lot going on at work and personally. But one thing remains, and that's hockey.
Yes, good and bad. And we have had plenty of both since our last recording in regards to the Devils, and we will get into all of that and much more today. We have a lot of things to discuss. A lot of really good from this week, and also a lot of really, really bad. So it's been a little bit of a wishy-washy start to the season for the New Jersey Devils. We did end the week, or I should say, when I say week, I mean since our last recording, technically 2-1. So you would, in a vacuum, you would look at that and say, hey, the Devils had a, not a terrible 7 days, but watching the games would maybe alter your perspective on that just a little bit. So
yeah,
we will get into all of that. We will get into the 3 games that the Devils have played since last Friday, which was the Islanders, the Montreal Canadiens, and lastly the Washington Capitals. But before we get into all of that, we have last week's Guess That Devil to get to. So
we do. We've been pretty good at remembering to put this at the start.
Yes, what was this? 4 episodes in a row now that
yeah.
we haven't fucked up.
I think we're getting there.
Yeah. All right. So why don't you remind everybody what last week's Guess That Devil clue was?
Yeah. So last week's Guess That Devil clue was that this devil was drafted 221st overall by the Washington Capitals. Funny that I chose them. In 2001, and played 3.5 seasons with the Devils before being traded. This defenseman was originally meant to be a depth player, but ended up playing 273 games with us, and later won 2 Stanley Cups and an Olympic medal. Silver Olympic medal.
All right, so once again, the first 40% of it, or maybe 50% of it, was not obvious, but those last 3 little bits there is what gave it away. So hopefully my confidence going into this is not false confidence, but I believe that this is none other than Johnny Oduya.
Correct, it is. Yeah, and one of our followers on Twitter also got this correct. So that's fun.
There you go. Nice.
So yes, the answer is Johnny Oduya. Now, I didn't know whether you would get this or not because I've not heard the name. I'm not familiar with this player. But he played with New Jersey from 2006 to 2009, and he was part of the trade for Ilya Kovalchuk.
Yes, he was. And he was, I would say, a pretty underappreciated Devil, I think. Maybe I'm not so... maybe not so much at the time, but I think looking back on it, I think he's probably a little bit underappreciated. But yeah, he was a part of that big Kovalchuk trade, and he was probably, honestly, looking back at that trade, he was probably the best piece on our end that came out of it. That was kind of a steal for us in retrospect. So that trade. So yeah.
So yeah, my fun little facts about him. He was drafted in 2001, but didn't play in the NHL until he signed with us as a free agent in 2006, or played in 2006. He ended up winning the Stanley Cups with Chicago a few years later. He's half Kenyan and half Swedish, which is a very interesting mix, but very cool. And since retiring, he's been back in Sweden working. He opened a business as a breathing instructor. So, interesting facts.
I love it when players have these, or I should say, not even just players. I love it when people in general have these very unusual mixes, like it reminds me of Siegs. You and I were talking about this the other day. The Swiss and Thai mixture, which is maybe it's more common than I realized, but I'm going to be honest. I've never met someone that was Swiss and Thai, so it's quite the combination. Yeah, I always love it when people have very unique and organic heritage mixtures.
Yeah,
so to speak.
They usually end up being very good looking, in my opinion. So,
no comment. All right.
Anyway,
we have a lot to get to this week. The Devils played 3 games between last Friday and the recording and release of this episode. It was the Islanders, the Canadiens, and the Capitals. As we mentioned before, the first of those obviously was the Islanders. I want to we're gonna go over the kind of the basic rundown of all 3 of these games, but the game that I really want to focus on is the last game that we played, which was yesterday's game against the Capitals.
The loss.
Sorry, 2 days ago against the Capitals. Yeah. But so we will start with the Islanders game, which was a 5-4 win for the New Jersey Devils. The final shot totals in the game were 39-32 in favor of New Jersey. And the goal scorers in that game were Hamilton on the power play at 19 minutes of the first period, assist from Meyer and Schmid, interestingly enough. Second goal of the game for the Devils was Toffoli on the power play at 21 seconds into the second period, assist from Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. Third goal was Luke Hughes on the power play again at 2 minutes and 36 seconds into the second period. Bratt and Jack Hughes were the assists on that. The fourth goal of the game was Jack Hughes on the power play once again. I think you're starting to notice a little bit of a theme here.
Mm-hmm.
At 4 minutes and 30 seconds into the third, assisted by Bratt and Palat. And the fifth and game-winning goal was Jack once again, his second of the game, at 2 minutes 19 seconds into overtime. Meyer and Marino were the assists on that Jack Hughes goal. First and foremost, the obvious thing to come out of this game, and the obvious to me, if you were just a casual watching this game, was the power play looked fantastic in this game, as it has all season. But I think this was kind of like the coming out party for the Devils power play. They went, was it 4 out of the 5 goals the Devils scored were on the power play? Or sorry, 3 out of the 4 in regulation were power play goals.
4 out of the 4.
Sorry, yes, all 4. Yes, yeah, all 4 of it was 4 out of 5 in total, and all 4 regulation goals were on the power play. So yeah, this was the coming out party for the Devils power play, and it's a shame that the defense and the penalty kill is still kind of a little. Well, the defense is more than wishy-washy. The penalty kill's been kind of wishy-washy. Because last year, what was one of the biggest problems? It was, the power play is maybe a little mediocre. Looked great at times, but also was kind of flat at other times. So, not this season. The Devils have come out on fire on the power play, and it's probably a little too early to determine if Travis Green is responsible for that. But, his primary job coming in as assistant coach associate coach is to run the power play, or specifically. So far, so good. The power play looked fantastic in this game.
Yeah, we were 4 for 5 on the power play in this game, so clearly did a great job at scoring. But it would be nice to get some more goals with 5-on-5 play.
Devils have been a little flat 5-on-5 at times this season, which is a little odd because last year they dominated 5-on-5 play.
Yeah,
and it was the power play specifically that was a little kind of middle of the pack, or bordering on mediocre, or bordering on the lower end of that. So but you're right. The 5-on. I've not been impressed with the 5 large stretches of the 5-on-5 so far this season.
Yeah. And if the Islanders hadn't taken so many penalties and we hadn't had as many power plays, this score and this game might have looked completely different.
You're right. It's probably a very different game, and especially considering the fact that Sorokin was fantastic in this game. And I mentioned this to you earlier before we started recording. If you just look at the box score, you would think that Sorokin had a pretty bad game for his standards. But he did not. The box score does not tell the story of this game if you're just looking at this is why I hate save percentage as just a raw statistic. Like it's a good statistic in when it's used in context of everything else going on in a game, but just looking at it on a sheet of paper or on a computer screen is not a great metric all the time to determine how well or how poorly a goalie played in a game. And this was a game that was a perfect example of that. Sorokin was leagues and leagues and leagues better than the final box score numbers made him look. He had a couple of he absolutely robbed who was it? Bashan at one point. He went post to post with the same pad. It was his.
He
left
went
pad.
past the post. Yeah,
he went from the left post to the right post with his left pad, and like you said, he actually ended up going beyond the right post to make a save. He just caught it with the tip of his left pad. And that was not the only one. Sorokin was definitely not the problem in this game for the Islanders. So, like you said, if it weren't for us going on the power play 5 times, this is probably a very different game.
Yeah.
This is probably a game we lose 4-1, maybe 4-2.
Yeah. And it was a good game. Obviously, we came out with a win, and obviously our power play looked great, but we didn't score in 5-on-5. And it did go to overtime, and that's how we won. Yeah. And truthfully, I don't know if we necessarily deserved that win. We did play well at times.
The advanced stats said that we did, not by much, but I don't know. I felt like the Devils didn't pass the eye test in this game. That's for sure.
Watching it, I was thinking, well, I don't really know whether we necessarily deserved that win, but I'm glad we got it. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad we got it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like good teams find a way to win, a good chunk of these games where they're not at their best, But the defense in this game was not good really for. You can't even say the Islanders played terribly defensively because, again, I mean, when you score 4 out of the 5 goals in a game are on the power play, you probably can't put all of that on a team's defense. But the Devils' defense certainly had its lapses. I thought Marino has had, and I thought he was in this game. Siegs, I thought was again kind of not great. There seems to be. We'll get into this as we go over the Montreal and the Washington games, but there seems to be a common theme to start the season with this defense, and we'll get into what I think that common theme is here shortly. But it's not a good one. It's not a common theme for the better. Yeah.
The other thing was the officiating wasn't necessarily the best at times. Yeah. We've seen this across a few games, just a couple of calls that either haven't been made or were made that shouldn't have been, like calling Maya for roughing when he turned around when he got hit.
That was a questionable roughing call at best. Yeah,
he didn't even do anything. He just kind of turned his face.
And don't get me wrong, Meyer has had a little bit of a penchant with us to take some kind of silly penalties at times, but this was not one of them. I saw that and I was like, that's okay. That is a very soft roughing, but okay.
Yeah.
So, anyway, the Devils walk away with a 5-4 win. Defense showed that it's struggling a little bit in this game, and that's going to be a theme going forward. And goaltending at times has been a problem as well. But positives, power play looks great. And this was Jack's first 4-point game of the season, I believe, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, 2 goals and 2 assists. So that was his first of a multitude of or well, it wasn't his first multi-point game. It was his first 4-point game of the season, in which he's had 2, and we will get into his second here in a little bit. So, yeah, Jack was all over the ice in this game. I mean, you kind of expect him to make a team like, and I don't mean this in like a disparaging way against Montreal, but you expect a player of Jack's caliber to kind of run through a team like Montreal, who's still kind of in the middle of a rebuild. And he certainly did not disappoint. There's been a lot of disappointments in the season early on, and Jack has not been one of them. That is for sure.
Jack's been running the show.
Yeah. I have some comments to make on that here shortly. So, let's inch our way towards that. The next game that the Devils played was against the Montreal Canadiens. That was a 5-2 win, and this was the first game that I thought the Devils, the first game this season, and really the only game this season that I thought the Devils kind of looked like the Devils of last year for the most part. There were still some defensive miscues in this game, and it wasn't perfect. But this was the first game that felt like it was a kind of a comfortable win. It felt like the team was firing on not all cylinders, but was starting to get the groove going, and looked a lot more reminiscent of last year's Devils as opposed to what we've seen out of the gate for most of the games we played this season.
Yeah, this was definitely the first game that I went, okay, yeah, that felt like we should have won that game. That felt like we deserved that win. And
I said to you going into this game, I said, I feel like that we need kind of a statement game. And this wasn't maybe as much of a statement as it could have been, just because of some of the defense still didn't look particularly up to snuff. But not that it was terrible, but, again, it was like, okay.
It was a statement from 2 players in particular, though.
Well, yes, so let's get into that. The goal scorers in this game were Holtz Holtz at 13 minutes and 24 seconds of the first period, assisted by Dougie Hamilton and Timo Meier. Second goal was Tyler Toffoli, a former Montreal Canadien, at 18 minutes and 22 seconds of the second period, assisted by Jack Hughes. Third was Nico Hischier at 34 seconds on the power play in the third period, assisted by Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt. And the fourth and fifth goals were both scored by none other than Tyler Toffoli. So it is a Toffoli hat trick in this game.
Yeah.
His second goal was at 7 minutes and 17 seconds on the power play yet again. Again, pretty common theme here. Of the third in the third period, assisted by Jack Hughes once again. And then his hat trick goal, and his that was his fourth of the season, leading up to that point.
I believe so.
At 19 minutes and 34 seconds, and it was an empty netter, assisted once again by Jack Hughes. So starting to see a little bit of a common theme here. Tyler Toffoli and Jack Hughes.
Yep. With a little bit of others sprinkled in, but...
Well, Jesper Bratt as well. It has felt a little bit like the Tyler Toffoli, Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt show. Through the first 2 weeks of the season. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really frustrating. But they're not all on the same line now, as the lines had been switched around a little bit. Yeah,
Lenni does have a penchant of doing that, and I know that it pisses some fans off, and it has most certainly frustrated me at times as well. But, yeah, there is some... I was going to wait to get into this until after the Washington recap, but since we're kind of inching towards that topic anyway, I just want to say that I'm not so... That top line, I think, needs to be shuffled. I know Palat has... Lindy moved Palat up to the first line, I believe, starting with, was it the Montreal game? It might have been the Islanders game, I can't remember. But the top line has been Palat, Hischier, and Bratt. And I am not sold. I shouldn't say I'm not sold. I don't like Palat being on the first line. I get the move, but we really need to get Dawson Mercer going. Through 6 games, he has had no goals. He's got no points. And he hasn't played terribly. I thought the first game of the season was a pretty bad game from him.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of the first game of the year, well, and the second game wasn't too much better. But outside of that, it's not like he's played bad. I wouldn't say that he's played poorly, but
he's just not been the way he was last season.
No, given
he's
what we
kind
know,
of been invisible.
Yeah, given what we know he's capable of, we need more out of him, particularly offensively. I think on the penalty kill and defensively, he's been adequate. He's been fine, but yeah, he is on the rush, on the power play. He has been, like you said, kind of invisible. And I think what we should do is I would really like to see Mercer get moved up to the first line. I know that like it's a common theme to when a guy is, I guess struggling is the right word for him. You reduce their minutes a little bit, and you try and find something else, maybe towards the lower side of the top six or whatever, or on the third line in his case. But I would really like to see Palat go back to the third line, and I think you just got to put Mercer on the first line and just give him ice time and just let him power through it, and work through it. I don't like Palat on the first line, and I think that even with a struggling Mercer, I would rather have Mercer, Hischier, Bratt on the first line as opposed
was
to
he
Palat
first line last year?
He played some first line last year with Nico, and he looked pretty good. Looked more than pretty good. He looked great. It might just be a slow start, and he picks things up. But I really, if I were, again, I am not an NHL coach. I wish I was, but I'm not.
No, really.
So take what I say with the biggest grain of salt in existence. But if it were me, I would move Mercer back up to the first line and just see if he can get it going with Nico and Bratt, and see if he can reconnect, or he can reestablish that scoring touch that he had with Nico last year.
Yeah, because also each of the lines kind of has a slightly different focus as well. Once you get to the third and fourth line, they're not necessarily focused on the scoring and all of that. So maybe he's better on the first or second line. Obviously, we don't want to mess it with the second line, but maybe put him on that first line, give him a go, see if he can be how he was last year.
Yeah, he's played a little bit of top line minutes this season. And I know that he's kind of lost not much ice time, because I think even in the Washington game a couple days ago, he still had 15-something minutes. I think he's averaging around 15 minutes a game, which is still realistically top 6 minutes. It's on the lower end of top 6 minutes, but it's still top 6. The great thing about a guy like Mercer is he's very versatile, and he can play on the power play. He can play the penalty kill. You can put him out there when you're down a goal. You can put him out there when you're up a goal and you're trying to preserve the lead. And I think that two-way game is a big part of the reason why he hasn't been a total net negative despite his lack of point production, because he still contributes elsewhere and he's still pretty good defensively and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the great thing about him is you can move him up and down the lineup and he can still be effective realistically anywhere in the lineup. But when it comes to his scoring, I think you need to. He needs to be with higher skill guys, I feel like, and I'm just not. I don't think that he's going to rediscover his point production where he's currently at in the lineup. So,
yeah, I guess he's not necessarily going to get the same kind of opportunities on those lines as he would with the top lines.
Well, bringing Toffoli in and him replacing Tatar, essentially, I think has made it more difficult for him to maintain that spot in the top 6. Again, I think he should be there until we've run that train into the wall. But the addition of Toffoli, who is a much more gifted scorer than Tatar, was, makes it easier to bump him down to the third line, So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of gone against him as well in a weird way.
And how Toffoli's been playing, he's proven that he should be in those top lines.
Oh,
Obviously,
yeah.
we expected that given last year, but especially these last couple of games, he's definitely shown his worth.
Toffoli has been worth every cent of that trade thus far, and then some. So, this is this was the last positive game of the week, other than some individual efforts in the Washington game, because the Devils against the Washington Capitals was a very, very frustrating 6-4 loss.
Mm-hmm.
This was once again a game that the Devils went down early. That is another common theme this season. The Devils are now, as a result of this game, the only team left in the league that has not scored first in any of their games. Yep. Going into this game, both the Devils and the Capitals were the only two remaining teams that had not scored first in any of their games. And this was not the normal, the Devils let the first goal in and then battle back from there. This game started 3-0. Well, it didn't start 3-0, but it ended up 3-0 in the first period, by the end of the first period. This was, without a doubt, the worst period of hockey the Devils have played all season. It wasn't even remotely close. This was the most pathetic performance of the season thus far.
Mm-hmm.
The Capitals were starting Shepard, who is a rookie goalie, and not just a rookie goalie, but it was his first NHL start. And do you want to know what the shot count for the Devils was at the end of that first period? Do you remember?
2.
Well, you at least got in the right ballpark, because on a rookie goalie in his first NHL start, the Devils mustered a whopping total of 3 shots on goal this period.
Oh my gosh.
So
I missed the first 2 periods of this game. That's why he's asking me, by the way, guys.
Yeah, the Capitals had as many goals as we had shots in the first period of this game. And I texted you and I said, well, this game is probably already easy, or already worthy of being written off. Now, I was wrong in that at least the Devils made it interesting, although in a heartbreaking fashion. But, yeah, that first period, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. Especially this whole game, to be honest, but especially in the first period of this game, the Devils' defense looked horrible. Absolutely horrible. Unable to control the puck in their own zone, unable to complete a pass, unable to maintain possession of the puck in their own zone. They were caught flat-footed on numerous occasions. Siegs probably had his worst game of the season. Him and Marino, to be honest. Luke Hughes has been pretty mediocre at best this season, at least in terms of his actual defensive play. I'm not going to harp on him too much for that. He's a 19-year-old rookie, so that would be unfair. And, we knew that there was going to be some growing pains going into this season defensively. But I don't think we anticipated... But you've got to have
solid defense around him.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think we anticipated the defense was going to look this shaky. Shaky is probably putting it
lightly.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a very, 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 very unsettling game and period for the Devils. It is, I said this on Twitter and I said this to you, it is inexcusable that a team with this much talent all around, but especially on offense, especially the forward group, only musters 3 shots on goal against a rookie goalie making his first career NHL start. You can't do that. I mean, I know that he ended up giving up 4 goals at the end, which, unless your defense let up 70 shots in a game, is generally not ideal. But the Devils didn't even make it difficult for him in the first. I mean, 3 shots is...
The box score that I'm looking at has it at 2 in the first on the NHL website.
Two
or 3 is still.
The NHL website is ever since the redesign of the app and the website have been terrible. So, let me see. Let me look here real quick because maybe they did. Oh, you know what? They must have removed. I think they were credited with 3 to end the period, and they must have taken a shot away. You're right. The Devils were only credited with 2 shots in the period, so even better.
Less shots than the number of goals that the Capitals scored.
Yeah, Capitals had more goals than shots in the period. I mean, one shot every 10 minutes.
Yeah. And Schmid was in net on our side, right?
To start that game, yes. He ended up getting pulled at the end of the first. I thought that he was going to get pulled after the third goal, but Lindy let him finish out the period. But, Vitek came in to start the second period, and it was Vitek's game from there on out. So he didn't really have much better of a game. He did play better, but marginally at best.
Yeah.
So,
but the second was where the game kind of came alive from the looks of things. Again, I missed this period, but that's where we scored our goals.
The first 7 minutes of this period looked like the Devils of last year at their peak. They scored 3 goals in 1 minute and 51 seconds to Foley, Meyer, and Hischier at 4:31, 5:19, and 6:42, respectively, of the second period. Hughes, Meyer, Toffoli, Jack Hughes, Meyer, Toffoli, Bratt, and Marino all had assists in varying fashions on these on these 3 goals, and it looked like, okay, whatever Lindy said to the team in the locker room or whoever it was, woke this team up because they came out on a tear to start this period. I mean, they came out pissed off. That's what it looked like. It looks like they came out that the second period started. They started the second period playing like they were pissed off, and they should have been pissed off. And it was all unicorns and rainbows at that point. It was like, okay, here we go. Devils are going to take this game over. We're going to win this like 6-4 or 5-3 or something, and we can go home happy. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. I'm sorry. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say, you gave me hope because I was on my way home from work by the end of that period, and I was going, right, cool, we're tied in the game. I'm going to come home from work and be able to watch this last period, and, it's going to be good. We're going to maybe fight our way to another win, maybe.
It sure seemed like it at first.
That last period.
Yeah, well, so we still
was not.
We still have some more of the second because after the Devils tied it up about 3.5 minutes later at 10 minutes and 1 second into the second, Toffoli gets his second of the night to give the Devils a 4-3 lead. Assists from both Hughes brothers, Jack and Luke. And right. I believe that is that the first time that they have both assisted on a goal? It's not the first time that they've both been on a score sheet together because that's happened.
I think that's the first Hughes assists.
I think it is, yeah. So at that point, again, it looks great. Devils are up 4-3. They're playing well. The defense is, I wouldn't say playing great, but they're playing fine, and that's really all we need. All we need from them most nights when the offense is doing its job. So, Devils go up 4-3, and then, as you alluded to earlier, the third period happened. And the third period was not as bad as the first, but not much better than the first.
Yeah.
Dylan Strome, Connor McMichael, and Alex Ovechkin score in the third period. The Devils do not get any goals in the period. Once again, both the Strome and the McMichael goals are on defensive gaffes and getting caught a little flat-footed. And the Ovechkin goal was an empty netter to seal the victory for the Capitals. The final shot count on the game is 25-22 in favor of Washington. And again, the two-shot first period is what I think killed us, or just the first period in general is what killed us, despite the fact that we managed to tie it up in the second. yeah, I said to you before, and I've said on social media before, that these slow starts are eventually going to come back and bite us in the ass. And in this game, it did.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a very frustrating game. I was having a terrible day already, and then that game happened. And I think we closed it after Ovi's goal. We didn't watch that last minute or so because there was not really any point at that point.
Admittedly, once the empty netter happened, I said, okay, that's it. That puts pretty much a stamp
no
on
more
that
torture.
Yeah, this was easily one of the more frustrating losses I can remember in recent Devils history. And when I say recent, I basically mean this year and last year. Yeah. The defense needs some work. And I don't know where... Basically everybody, yeah. You know, unironically... ironically... one of the defensemen that hasn't pissed me off in one way or the other in terms of their defensive play that I could there's nothing that stands out to me that I can think of is Dougie. And Dougie's generally not the guy he's not a total pylon out there, but you're not going to get Dougie is not going to be a Norris candidate really in any season, but he's one of the few I feel like that hasn't. He doesn't have a particular play that stands out in my mind this year that I was just really pissed off and annoyed by. Yeah, like you said.
Obviously, he I don't think he's been playing as great as he can, and this is someone, he's my favorite player. So, but I'm still good at being critical, and he hasn't been playing as great as he can. We know that he's not necessarily the best at defense, and he's one of the more offensive defensemen. And we've been seeing that from him this year, but the problem is that we don't have the rest of defense being defensive to help make up for the things that Dougie lacks in that regard. Yeah,
defense has really, really struggled. And again, we knew that this was going to happen, but I think that even I may have underestimated I didn't expect them to look this bad defensively.
Yeah.
6 games into the season. I mean, Brendan Smith, as soon as either Nemec or Miller get healthy, Smith's got to go. I generally don't want to sound, I don't try to be a dick about these things because they're still human beings at the end of the day, but the less that I have to see of Brendan Smith in a Devils jersey, the better. At this point, I can't think of anything redeeming that he brings to the team at this point, other than bad defense, and that's certainly not redeeming. So, I don't know if this is a situation where we just need to let them kind of plow through it and rely and trust that the coaching and the players are going to get it, the coaches and the players are going to get together or what, but. Defense is a big problem, and goaltending hasn't been really that much better. Schmid has been more reminiscent of the 2021-2022 Akira Schmid and not the 2022-2023 Akira Schmid, and that's been a problem as well.
Yeah, agreed. I know in the post-game interview for this game, Lindy said that it wasn't necessarily goaltending's fault and it was more on the defenseman, but goaltending, there were definitely some goals that I saw that they should have easily stopped some of those goals that went in.
Schmid's been a little leaky, and I do agree that it's definitely more on the defense than the goaltending because they've absolutely left both Schmid and Vitek out to dry or hung them out to dry a few times. But there have absolutely been some leaky goals as well, and it's particularly with Schmid and starting to get to the point where it's a little concerning. The goaltending specifically. The defense is more than a little concerning. But the goaltending has been a little concerning, particularly from Schmid.
I do want to say, in terms of defense, one name we haven't said is Ball, and I have liked Ball's game for the most part.
Ball has been, I would say Ball's been fine. Not particularly great, but certainly not bad. There was a Lindy brought this up. I think it was over the summer. And he said that one of the areas that the Devils, or that the team was working with him on, was helping him speed up his decision making defensively, and just with the puck, like in all situations, because he tends to delay a little bit, and there's like still a little bit of there's like a little bit of a pause at times in his decision making, and it's never really like completely killed us in any situation, but definitely not something you want to get into the habit of doing. So, I think that he still probably has some work to do in that area of his game. But I agree that he's probably been one of our better defensive defensemen to start the season. Yeah. Geez, I don't want to know how much worse it could be if Ball was playing terribly as well. This could be probably take a win or two away.
I've mostly felt disappointed in Marino because you kind of expected Smith to be bad, and he is, and he takes those penalties, and you expect him to take those penalties. But Marino,
I actually think Siegs has been worse, to be honest.
Siegs has also been, Marino and Siegs are two that you expect to play better than they are.
Yeah.
And they have not been playing well. I mean, we know this because Marino got benched for that one third period several games ago, I think it was. That was the same one with Maya.
That was last week. That was in the loss to we haven't played the Flames yet.
Sorry, Florida, not Flames. I said I'm looking at FLA and my brain said Flames.
Yeah, either way, Marino has had a rough start to the season, and so has Siegs. They both have been very disappointing.
Yeah. So we definitely need to get our defense be a bit more solid.
Yeah, I mean we need to pry Luke away from Smith. I didn't like Luke being paired with Smith in the first place. I hated it. I did try and defend it a little bit and say I can kind of understand why they don't want to throw him to the fire yet. But, I mean, it's pretty clear at this point that the Luke and Smith connection is not working. Not that I was really all that confident in it working anyway, but they did start playing Luke with Dougie in the third period of this game. Well, I mean, when you're down, you're probably going for offense at that point. And I honestly, at this point, I don't think that him playing with Dougie could be any worse than him playing with Smith. Dougie has still been the better defenseman, and it's not even close than Smith has. Yeah. Smith has been that bad. So, in a vacuum, 2 months ago, I had the same reaction. I was like, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about Luke and Dougie, but like at this point, we're
I think Dougie would be a great mentor for him, but in terms of pairing on the ice, since both of them like to play a bit more offensively, not always the best idea. But at this point, anything, like you said, anything could be better than with Smith.
Yeah. I don't know what the answer is at this point. But the defense has got to be better. They've got to clean up these lapses that they go through where they just seemingly forget how to play hockey.
Have been a couple of moments where you've seen them and they just kind of seem to be watching the play happen.
They're flat-footed. Yeah, they're watching the puck.
Yeah.
They're instead of anticipating the play in front of them or behind them, they're watching the puck, and everything just feels frantic with this team. Yeah. Everything feels very uncoordinated and frantic, and like we've talked about this before,
unintentional.
Urgency is important in all sports, but it's particularly in hockey. But there's a difference between urgency and chaotic. And the Devils are playing, particularly on defense, and with their passing, are playing very chaotic and sloppy and uncoordinated, and it's affecting other areas of the game as well. I do genuinely believe that these defensive woes are what is dragging down our 5v5 numbers and our 5v5 performance. Because analytically,
it's not for lack of.
Go ahead.
It's not for lack of trying from our forwards, at least from the Toffoli, Brett Hughes of the forwards.
We need some more of the depth guys to step up. Now both Hischier and Meyer have had better performances the last few games.
That is good.
Particularly
good
Meyer, but we still need more from Hischier on offense. And I mean, Meyer had a goal and assist this last game, so I'm not going to say that we need more from him. If he continues, to put up at least some points, then I genuinely believe that everything else will kind of fall in place with him. But aside from the first two games where he sure struggled in the face-off dot, a lot of his game has started to rebound. But
he's been getting some points again. He was injured. He seems to be better now, and that I was worried about him in that last game though. He was taking some really bad hits.
Honestly, I'm more worried about Jack because he took that nasty hit into the boards where it wasn't into. He got hit and he tumbled into the boards, and it looked like he went shoulder/back first. And I noticed that after that hit, he did come back out and play again. After that, but he had really labored on a pass or clearing attempt, and it just looked really weak. And his general stick play looked pretty weak after that. So I'm a little concerned about Jack in that regard. But hopefully it's just some soreness and he gets. So I without Jack's insane start, and we're gonna get to that in a minute. This is a much worse start to the season. There's no doubt about it. Jack has absolutely been instrumental in us having the 3 point or the 3 wins that we have.
Yeah.
All around just a bad game for the Devils. Easily the worst game they've played all season. Just a bad game. But with that being said,
should we get to some good news in the periphery of the Devils?
Yes, there is some good to take out of this week, and I don't want to be all doomer and gloomer here. So, obviously, the most obvious positive takeaway is Jack is on an absolute freaking tear to start the season. He has played, in the 6 games that he has played, he has 17 points, 4 goals, and 13 assists, which is the most points through the first 6 games of a season since Mario Lemieux in 1995-1996.
So he's got the most points in the first 6 games since I was born.
Yes, and anytime, anytime that you are put, that your name is put next to Mario Lemieux, you're in pretty good company. So this has been a historically great start for Jack Hughes. I don't know what else to say about him. He is just such a pleasure to watch. Like, literally, that's every time I watch a Devils game, no matter what else is happening in the game, no matter what other storylines are going on, no matter how other players are playing, regardless of all of that, the one recurring theme in my head every time I watch Devils game is, man, it is such a pleasure to watch Jack play for my team. If he gives me, it's like watching, and I'm not saying that Jack is on McDavid's level, but it's like watching McDavid and that, like, you watch him play and you're like, man, God, I wish I could have him on my team.
Yeah.
It's a scary thought to think of where the Devils would be to start the season if it weren't for Jack's absolutely ridiculous start.
Yeah.
And by the way, to put that into context, the most points through the first 6 games of a season in modern NHL history, and I think modern is anything. I don't remember the exact cutoff, but I think it's sometime in the 50s or the the 60s. I just don't know what the exact year is. So the all-time record. Do you want to take a guess who? Do you know who owns the record?
I mean, isn't it Gretzky?
It's not, surprisingly.
It's not?
No. So, of the top 5, Gretzky is actually not even top 2.
Oh.
Yeah. So first.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you have a second guess?
No, I do not.
Well, I just said his name. The record holder for this is Mario Lemieux, who had 22 not 22 goals, good grief. 22 goals in six games. He had 22 points in the first 6 games in the 1998 to 1999 season. Second is Mike Bossy, who had 20 in 6 in 84 and 85.
I've not heard of him.
Third is Mario Lemieux again with 19 points in 6 games in 92-93. And then we finally get to that scrub, Wayne Gretzky, with 18 points in 6 games in the 83-84 season. Jack is right below him at 17 in 6. So he is now top 5 all time in points scored in the first 6 games to start a season in NHL history.
Yeah.
And I know that is slightly cherry-picked because 6 is kind of an odd number, but it's still anytime that you are put in the discussion of Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, and I guess by extension Mike Bossy, because he was certainly no scrub either, you're in pretty good company. So historic and a historic star for Jack, and he's only a friendly reminder, he is only 22 years old.
And he's a New Jersey Devil.
Jack Hughes is a New Jersey Devil.
I remember seeing a tweet, and I apologize, I'm probably going to get this wrong because I don't have it in front of me right now, but it was looking at the top points leaders for the NHL this season, and Jack was at the top, and then it had someone else, and then I think Jack was third again in assists alone.
Yeah, he has 13. He's sitting at 13 assists, which is more than like the next 2 players below him have total points.
I think they have 12 total points or something. Yeah,
he's off to just an unbelievably insane start. I don't think we.
So that was very amusing to see Jack Hughes, someone else, and then Jack Hughes again. I'm sorry, I can't remember who that someone else is, but
just his assists. Yeah. So, that's the best thing that we can take out of this week. Once again, Bratt continues to look fantastic. Toffoli, obviously, with the hat trick. And what is it, 7 points in his last 2 games or 3 games? Yeah.
8
looks
in his
like
last
an absolutely
3.
brilliant acquisition from Tom Fitzgerald. So we just need the defense to just not play horrible. Like, just take a step and just not play horrible. Just play like sound defense. You don't even have to play like top 10 defense. Just play league average sound defense. And the outlook, I think, is a lot better. And obviously we need depth guys like Mercer and Palat and Holtz to... God, it feels weird labeling Holtz as a depth guy, but we need those guys to step up more on offense as well. Not that the offense has necessarily been the problem. 5-on-5 is a little questionable, but yeah.
Now, one thing that might help our defense, and some other good news from this week, is Nemec, who has been injured, is back to skating in a regular practice jersey.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Not the no-contact jersey, so that's a pretty good sign, and hopefully that means that maybe we need to bring him forward again.
Well,
maybe we need to bring him forward.
Yeah, I mean, you need him to get some more games in just to get him back in the groove from injury. He took a really nasty hit a couple of weeks, last week or a week and a half ago. No, more than a week ago. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. And he's been out since. Again, I've heard that it was a concussion, but they just say upper body. They're always vague about it. But it certainly seemed like it was a concussion, and he just, like you said, just today was now practicing in a regular jersey and not a regular practice jersey and not a no contact jersey. So hopefully that means that he is going to get into the Comets next game, and we can get him off and running again. So once he plays a few games in Utica and he looks okay, I mean, the question becomes, all right, when do you call Nemec up? If the defensive woes continue, I feel like you're kind of almost, your hand is almost being forced in that situation. I know that we're still not sure what's going to happen with Miller, because he's still out with an injury, and we're not really sure when he's going to come back. How much of a difference does he make? I don't know. Probably not a lot. He had a pretty horrible preseason in the limited time that we saw him, so I'm not super confident in him coming in and making a difference. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of Devils fans out there that were really pissed about Nemec not starting in the NHL this year. And kind of to this point, and I you know me, I was one of those guys that was kind of a
cautious.
Yeah, I was kind of a defender of the decision. And I still kind of am. Like, I don't think it was necessarily the wrong decision to make. I just think I think it's easy in hindsight to go back and look and say, oh, maybe it wasn't. Maybe we should have kept him up. But yeah, there was a lot of Devil fans that were upset about it, and with the current state of how the defense has played and how everything has played out in the last few games, it's kind of validating that. And I
at the very least, he's coming back from being injured. So from here on, if he's going to start playing back in Utica, we've still got him as a backup option if something were to happen to one of our guys.
Yeah, and that's going to be important, because I do think that he is the next guy up if once he gets back to being healthy and gets a few games under his belt. So we kind of touched on this a little bit last week. I mean, how much rope do guys like Brendan Smith have? Hopefully it's not a lot, but right now the team's been kind of hamstrung through injuries and all of that. So I think in hindsight, knowing what I know now, I probably would have kept Nemec up, but I will stick by my original statement that without the privilege of knowing what we know now, it was a completely understandable decision. But boy, it's looking shaky.
Yeah.
Some other good news is a couple of Devils prospects have looked pretty good to start the seasons in their respective leagues. Both Hämeenaho and Gritsyuk, who are both wingers. Hämeenaho was drafted just this past year in the second round, and Gritsyuk was drafted in 2019. I don't remember what round he was drafted. Was he third? I should have had this pulled up. Fifth round. I forgot how late he was. Yeah, fifth round, 129th overall, 2019 draft pick. He is also a winger. He's 22 years old. Most Devils fans are probably familiar with his name at this point. I don't think really anybody outside of Devils fandom really knows who he is, but
I'm new, so I've not heard of him. I have heard of Hämeenaho, though.
Yeah, so I mean, they're both forwards who, Hämeenaho was a second round pick, so you can't really call him a late round or a late draft pick. But Gritsyuk at fifth round was definitely a late round pick. But in the Finnish league, Hämeenaho has played 15 games, has 9 goals and 4 assists for 13 points. So he is off to just a really, really hot start.
Great start
in the Finnish league. And as a winger, it's starting to look like that both him and Gritsyuk are probably going to be, I would say their upper trajectory would be top 6 sniper. Not someone who's going to give you 40, 50, 60 assists in a season, but it's, could the ceiling for both. Gritsyuk is a little bit more of an unknown for me. Or I shouldn't say unknown, but a little bit more of a question mark for me. But I think Hämeenaho's ceiling, honestly, is, I could see him developing into a 20 to 30 goal, a consistent 20 to 30 goal scorer in the NHL. Probably not going to play a whole lot of defense, but not every player can be a top 50 player in the league defensively. So, Hämeenaho's off to a fantastic start, as is Gritsyuk. Oh, Gritsyuk, by the way, has 6 goals and 3 assists for 9 points in 14 games played in the KHL. So he's off to a pretty good start as well.
Yeah. It's nice to have those kind of prospects up our sleeve, just things to look at for in the future or just as backups eventually. You never know.
I mean, you missed the periods where freaking Eric Jelena and Matthias Tedenby and Santini and others were who we were staking our future on, and none of them have turned out to be much of anything at the NHL level. So, it's honestly, and again, neither of these guys have played a single shift in the NHL, so it's too early to define what they are. But for a second round and a fifth round pick, they are looking pretty good, and it's good. At the
very least, they could be traded for something good that's known.
Yeah, exactly.
Potentially,
and and if they reach their potential, then those are great. That's great drafting. The best teams in the NHL generally don't just draft well when they have a top 5 pick. They also draft well in the late first round or the second round or the third. Those mid to late round picks a lot of the times are what define really good NHL teams. And we have all of this talent, and we still have promising prospects coming up through the pipeline, which is such a polar opposite from what it felt like just 6 or 7 years ago as a Devils fan, where it just felt like the cupboards were bare and the future was bleak and all hope was lost. And I know that this week hasn't been particularly great.
This last 2 weeks, really.
Yeah, in terms of it's not the most ideal start to the season that we could have imagined, but it's still a much better situation than we were in. And I do genuinely think the Devils will be fine. I just think that we've got.
It's just taking us a little bit of time to get there.
We've got to work through. Yeah, we've got to work through these struggles, and it's better to get them out of the way early in the season than in December or in March when you're battling for playoff positions. So yeah. That pretty much concludes a very up and down week for the Devils. They are now 3-2-1 in their first 6 games, so they have 7 points out of a possible 12, which is it's a playoff pace, but we need to step it up. Yeah,
yeah. We've got 3 more games in the next week before we record. 2 of those are going to be against Minnesota, I believe. The Wild.
Yep, those are going to be good tests because Minnesota is not a. I wouldn't really necessarily classify them as a cup contender, but they're not an easy out. So. Yeah,
and our first game of this coming week is against Buffalo. So.
That game scares the shit out of me because of Buffalo's ability to score. And our defensive woes. I mean, I'm like having nightmares of that being like a 7-3 game or 7. Like we just give up 7-8 goals or something. I certainly hope not.
Let's not wish that into existence.
No, I'm not wishing it into existence. But God, looking at how everything has played out so far, would I be surprised if Buffalo put up a 7 spot on us? No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, that game scares me. But hey, I mean, these are the challenges that this team is going to have to learn to overcome. If they want to be serious cup contenders. I mean, you got to figure out a way to overcome these rough stretches. So, yeah,
it would be really nice if we could get a couple of wins though, because those first 2 games this coming week are going to be at home, and we've not been playing. We
got to play better at home.
Our two wins this last week came while we were away.
On the road.
Came on the road, and that's not fair. Our people that are watching the games from home.
Yeah, they're paying a lot of money, by the way. Those tickets are not cheap. All right. Yeah. Well, hopefully the Devils can get it all together, and we can have a much better discussion for next week's episode. A couple of little tidbits to tidy up here. The NHL very predictably reversed the ban on custom pride tape and other shows of social. What was the exact phrase they use? Shows of support for social causes in practice and warm-ups. So Travis Dermott of the Arizona Coyotes basically just decided, fuck your ban. I'm going to wear pride tape, or I'm going to put pride tape on my stick for warm-ups and for the game.
Mm-hmm.
And the NHL, shockingly,
A couple of days later,
didn't do jack shit about it. Because I think we all kind of knew that this is how this was going to play out. There was going to be a player or players that were going to defy the ban and basically dare the league to fine them. Fine me. Go for it. And I think we all knew that the Players Association was not going to have that. That was not going to go over well. It was just not going to happen. And sure enough, it did not happen. And not only did none of that happen, but the NHL reversed their decision.
Yeah. They said, we maybe went a bit too far with that, essentially.
We don't want to deal. You know what? We don't want to deal with the nightmare of this. Well, you know what? Maybe you shouldn't have instituted such a stupid rule in the first place. And, either way.
I'm glad that it didn't have to take multiple players and or big names in the league. Not saying that Travis Dermott isn't a big name. I hadn't necessarily known it, but that's you can't judge that on whether or not it's a big name. But I'm glad that it didn't necessarily take the likes of, say, Connor McDavid doing it in order for them to reverse it. I'm glad that it was just someone in general, and hats off to Travis, and thank you.
That's honestly the funniest part to me, is that it was just, I don't want to say he's a no-name player, but he's not a star player. That's the part that's funny to me, is that it was literally just your everyday run-of-the-mill player that most people outside of hardcore fans have no idea who they are. All it took was someone at his level in the league to defy the ban, and the NHL say, yeah, you know what, screw this. We can't enforce this, so we're just gonna go back on it. I agree. I'm glad that it did not take a player, the caliber, a superstar caliber player, to defy the ban to get to this point, but that just makes it all the more ridiculous to me. Like, yeah,
it's like I stand by. I know I got emotional when we talked about it the first time, but I stand by my whole thing was just, why? Mm-hmm. What's the point? Especially because this is an optional thing. Like, it was just a really dumb decision, a poor decision on the NHL's part, and I don't want to go too much further into it because this was the right thing that they should have done. From the start, they should have done this. And I'm not going to give them any more props than that because that's the bare minimum.
Congrats. You did. You used some common sense and you got yourself out of a situation that you should have never been in the first place. Good job. Congratulations, NHL. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
anyway, shall we wrap up this episode with the Guess That Devil clue?
We have gone on for over an hour now, and I knew this was going to be a long episode, but yes, let's. The fine people that follow us and listen to us, I don't think want to hear us go on for hours and hours. So, with that being said, why don't you lead us into next week's, technically, however you look at it, Guess That Devil.
Yes, this devil was drafted 27th overall by New Jersey in 1998 and played 8 seasons with the Devils. So therefore he helped the Devils win 2 of the 3 Stanley Cups, and he was the first NHL player from Alaska.
Swish! Easiest one you have done yet.
I know.
Knew who it was at the end of the first sentence.
And I knew that was going to be the case, but I just thought, look, I got to get some of the easy ones in between some of the harder ones, and this is mostly for the new people like myself who wouldn't have got it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'll give you the answer next week, even though pretty much everyone listening probably knows.
If there are not at least 3 people that reply to the tweet for this, just out of sheer ease of difficulty, or lack of difficulty, I should say, I will be disappointed.
Yeah, if you know this one and you listen to the podcast, because I know obviously we have some followers on Twitter that don't listen to the podcast, but if you know this one and you listen to the podcast and you're on Twitter, just reply to it with the funniest photo of this player that you can find, or the funniest
I
GIF,
like that. There you go.
Or like the weirdest goal or something along those lines. Just something like that, rather than just the name.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like that a lot.
I think it'd be funny.
Great idea. Maybe we should just do that every week. Just give us your most ridiculous replies that still give an answer. I like that. Nice. All right. Well, with that being said, we are now an hour and almost 15 minutes in. Let's wrap this baby up. I did want to add one little final note. We are now, for those of you that, for whatever reason, might find this more convenient or more accessible, we are now uploading to YouTube as well. So you can listen to every episode of Devils Down Under, starting with episode 8, which was 2 episodes ago. Can go to our YouTube, and you can find us by searching for Devils Down Under. But the actual account is at Devils Down Under Pod. So it's youtube.com/@DevilsDownUnderPod. And all of our episodes going forward, starting with the October 13th episode, will be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well. So if that is something you would prefer, then go on over and subscribe.
Mm-hmm. Very exciting.
Other areas that you can find us are on Twitter, at DDU_pod. As always, that is for the time being where we do the vast majority of our interaction and our off day chat. We will probably start moving into other areas soon, especially as Twitter seems to continue to go downhill. But
decline.
Yeah. So, speaking of elsewhere, you can pretty much find us everywhere else: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, by searching for Devils Down Under. We haven't really posted anything to those accounts yet, but we will eventually get around to it. This time of year it's a tough time to get everything organized between work life and home life and the podcast. So we'll get around to it eventually. But for now, you can find us on Twitter and YouTube. I guess that wraps us up for the week, Georgia, unless you have anything else to add.
No, that's everything. Thanks to everyone that listens.
All right, guys. And once again, one final little note. You can email us at devilsdownunderpodcast@gmail.com for your answers to Guess That Devil, questions, comments, concerns, feedback, anything of the sort. Feel free to shoot us an email. Memes. We'll take some memes. Why not? And I promise you we will do our best to respond in a timely manner. And that pretty much wraps us up, guys. We will talk to you again next week.
Bye.